My name is Crabtree, head football coach at Waverly High School. I'm also what we call our Waverly Academy of Virtual Education teacher as well. And then I run the strength program at Waverly High School as well. Yeah, actually I've been in Waverly my whole life. I grew up here, I went to school here, played football here as well, and was fortunate enough to, once I graduated from college, to come back and do my student teaching and coach here as an assistant. I was probably an assistant for close to 18 years, and then I had the opportunity to be the head coach. I'm heading into my 6th year as being the head coach, so a lifelong Waverly resident. Probably about 15 years into my role as being an assistant, or actually about the 3rd year of being assistant, the head coach at that time was Coach Bolin, and he allowed me to kind of take over the weight room procedures and kind of set programs up. And I had a very strong interest in that as someone who kind of lifted through high school and kind of tried to stay in shape. And so I went full force into that. And over time, probably one of the biggest battles I think we faced was, ultimately we're a school that needs our best athletes to play as many sports as possible. But when you get a kid that never gets a chance to do any strength training, or maybe he only does it in the summer, and then come fall or football, we're limited a little bit, and then if they play basketball or baseball, then it's hard to get in the weight room at that time. Or you had a kid that lifted hard all winter and then it didn't do anything in the spring, so you kind of just I felt like we were beating our head against the wall sometimes and losing things that we gained. So we're very fortunate to have an administration that is very big on trying to help our athletes. With Josh Hobbs, when he became the school board member and the board president, we've had conversations with him and the superintendent, Mr. Dickens, as well, and we felt like we needed to do something. And our solution was to start implementing a class to give our athletes an opportunity to lift as much as year-round as possible. That way they're not going to have to make a choice. Some kids like, well, I don't want to play basketball because I want to lift all winter. And that's not really what we want. We want our kids, if they're good enough to play other sports, we want them to play as many sports as possible. And having that class during the day gives us an opportunity for those guys to continue to play as many sports as they would like and still be able to lift during their season as well. I'm fortunate enough that I have a lot of football players, but probably the first year that we did that, we had a mixture of people that played football or basketball that were athletes and those that were not. And that's the thing, not all those guys want to do the things that maybe we might be doing as a football player or basketball player or whatever. But what I tried to do was just try to introduce them into the things that we were doing for our athletes. And you got to teach them basics anyways. So a lot of the same lifts that we're doing are things that they need to learn, even if they're just going to be, later on in life, a meathead that likes to go lift, and they need to learn the basics, whether it's squat, bench, and deadlift, if they want to go to their local gym. So my approach to that was just trying to make sure that we taught them how to do the right things. That way, if they do go off on their own and they're lifting in the local gym, that they're doing things right, that they're not going to injure themselves. And so that's kind of one of the approaches that I took. We do a lot of the same stuff. Just the big key is just, not just we want to make sure our athletes are doing things well, but anybody that's in the class, we really try to teach them to do things the right way. Me having a little bit of background of lifting throughout my career, one of the things I've always tried to do, and probably early on, I tried my own attempt and version of kind of like West Side barbell lifting, style lifting, which is, a conjugate approach. And early on, I kind of applied that stuff to our football players, to our program as much as possible. Then probably over the years, I deviated a little bit of that. I've had different types of influences. And then, I've always been a fan of elitefts and the question and answering forum. I followed that forever. And I just happened to come across Nate Harvey stuff and was reading, and I was like, man, this really kind of fits into what I like and what I understand and what I know. And, I felt like this is something we got to get back to. We started about a 16-week program of it, and we really started to see a lot of benefits. Our kids were getting stronger. I felt like they were getting more explosive, and I think it's just a great fit for athletes in general, and not just for football either, but for all sports. And we were fortunate enough to have Nate come down and do a seminar for us. And me being the football coach and kind of the strength coach, sometimes we get a bad rap of like, you're just doing football stuff. Sometimes the other coaches don't necessarily understand what we're doing. And that was a great thing about Nate coming down. I think he kind of cleared the air a little bit and tried to explain, what we're wanting to achieve in the weight room, and how this is not just good for football, but it's good for all sports in general. So, with him coming down, it's going to probably take some time, as anything, anytime you try to change things. But I think our coaches are going to, get on board, and that's one of the great things that having that class is. I get to run a number of periods, and then we have another guy that runs a number of periods, and this is what we're going to do. So, we were going to try to get as many athletes in those classes as possible, and that way we can train them in that, and then that's just going to help the other sports coaches out if they're doing something after school. They can gain, those players, those lifters are going to have that information already. It's kind of funny that I did some testing early on, and some basic, like we did some broad jump and some different tests overall, and we just did that towards the end of the year of our school year. And and again, primarily I have most football players, so I don't have as many non-athletes in my classes overall. But the broad jump, there was like 4 to 6 inch increase in our broad jumps from the first time we did it to the time we did it here. And then just our overall strength and just the way our kids have looked since we started doing that. I mean, you can just see significant changes overall. We've had guys that have gained 5, 6, 7 pounds in the process. So that's, to me, tells me and shows me that things are going in the direction that I want them to. Okay, as far as the culture is, again, like we have a lot of, I get to do a lot of football players, and that's one of our big things that we've been pushing. In our culture, we have 3 main things. No excuses, relentless effort, and tiger pride. And then, as you saw in the weight room there, best is the standard. It's kind of everything we do, we want to give our best. That's the standard that we want to set. And again, it's not the person next to you best or whatever, it's your best each and every day. Our goal is to get a little bit better each and every day. And so that's what we've tried to apply in our weight room as well. And trying to teach our kids, to work hard and hold others accountable. If they're not doing something right, coach them up, make sure they're doing things the right way. As far as our injuries, again, we've been pretty fortunate that we haven't, I think this has been a big change for us, and I think it's Josh would attest to this, that, that's one of the things that we felt like we needed to do, was to get our kids lifting more to deal with the injuries. Because like he said, early on, when I took over as kind of head coach, went through a few tough years where we had some kids that were banged up, and we just weren't as physical as we needed to be. And then, the last, ever since we kind of started this class, I felt like our injuries have diminished quite a bit. Last year, it was unfortunate that we had an ACL tear, and that's just, it was kind of one of those freak things that just happened. I think our training proved to be effective in the sense that even though we still had the ACL tear, the kid, because of our culture, because of our standard, he busted his butt in the physical therapy, and then within probably 6 months, a little bit longer, he was part of our powerlifting team, and he, at 135 pounds, he deadlifted 420 pounds. So he bounced back very quickly, and I think that's because of, he had been able to lift and continue through that each and every season. He's a 2-sport athlete, and he continued to lift throughout the year. And then, like I say, his rehab, I think, went a lot quicker than maybe it would have if he had not been in that situation. But our concussions have been down, I think, in the last year or so. Once we started getting everybody in the class, we try to do an emphasis on neck strength, and obviously we're teaching ways of tackling and keeping the head out of it. But I think it's just been a great thing overall to reduce the amount of injuries and just make our kids healthier overall. Obviously, one of the reasons why you lift as an athlete. You want to get stronger and more powerful, but also I think that helps reduce the amount of injuries. We're trying to put on mass and different things, strengthen the tendons and the ligaments, and I think those things go a long way of reducing the amount of injuries that you're going to have. Last couple of years we've been fairly successful. We went 9-1, made the playoffs. Last year we were 7-3, made the playoffs. We've lost a significant amount of pretty key players those last couple of years, and I think with our kids and our work effort, we've been able to kind of bounce back, and that's really what we expect this year. We have a very solid group of seniors this year. They have a tremendous work ethic. They come in and work hard in the weight room. They come out here and do all the things they need to do on the field, football skill-wise and agility-wise. So with the things that we've been doing in the weight room, I think it's going to pay off. We look to have a very successful season this year. We're fortunate enough that we have several home games this year, and we've been pretty successful here at home, and we look for a very positive year out of these guys.